Today, we're going to hear also from another new cosmologist, as well as hearing about past cosmologies and cosmologies from other cultures, both Chinese and Western. And then we're going to hear about the new paradigm cosmology and its effect upon our current culture. And finally, we're going to have a panel discussion with the different presenters, and we'll be having various questions posed to them, and you can also ask questions as well. With that, I will introduce our next presenter, Amit Goswami. Amit was a professor, researcher, best-selling author, quantum science pioneer, and spiritual practitioner. Still doing all those. Dr. Goswami, PhD, is a retired professor from the physics department of the University of Oregon from 1968 to 1997. He is a renowned pioneer of the new paradigm of quantum science based upon the primacy of consciousness. Goswami has written several groundbreaking popular books based on research on quantum science and consciousness, among them The Self-Aware Universe, The Quantum Brain and Quantum Spirituality, along with Valentino Onsinor, and The Quantum Doctor, Physics of the Soul, Quantum Creativity, and the Everything Answer book. In 2019, Amit started a movement called quantum activism, now gaining ground in North and South America, as well as Europe and India. In 2019, he and his collaborators established quantum activism at the University of Technology in Jaipur, India, and developed a master's and a PhD program in quantum science of health, prosperity, and happiness. It's an international program of transformative education. Amit was featured in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? And the documentaries The Dalai Lama Renaissance and The Quantum Activist. Amit is a spiritual practitioner and calls himself a quantum activist in search of wholeness. So Amit is going to speak today on quantum integration of science and spirituality. And with that, I turn it over to you, Amit. Welcome.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to talk in this company of very highly erudite experts. I want to make a case for quantum physics, of course. The illustrious Dalai Lama has said, no model of reality is possible without taking account of quantum physics, and there got to be a reason for making such a grandiose declaration. What are these reasons? Few facts about quantum physics that everyone should know. After all, quantum physics is the latest paradigm in physics. If you consider the materialist paradigm, it is the final physics. There is no question in anybody's mind that quantum physics is the final physics for the material world. Now, of course, the question is, does quantum physics apply to the mental, to consciousness? And this question has been fundamentally easy to answer from quantum physics, but one has to go slightly outside of quantum physics, and this is quantum measurement problem. But again, look at what quantum physics is saying. This is the first thing that you have to know, which is that objects are not concrete objects. Objects start as ideas, waves of possibility for consciousness to choose from. How do we know that it is consciousness that chooses? Very simple. Alan Aspect via experiment showed, as Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen predicted a long time ago, there is a special relationship in correlated quantum objects. How do you correlate to quantum objects? Let them interact, come close and interact. When correlated quantum objects interact, they become one. They don't need any signals to communicate anymore. This phenomenon is called non-locality. What Aspect did with his team is to verify that such communication without signals really happens between quantum objects if they are correlated. No doubt can be raised about this data. And this data also, surprisingly to some people, has been confirmed between correlated human beings. But I'll come to that later. Okay, what is the second fact? Second fact is that the quantum physics shows us, again, without any doubt, that the world of objects, world of any definition remain in potentiality. Because this unity that we just proved, it is also for the potential domain of potentiality, where the possibility waves reside. And this is the way the world is, the world of possibility, domain of potentiality. Until an observation is made, this is where quantum measurement theory comes in, until an observer comes in the picture. The observer effect is part and parcel of what quantum physics is. Without an observer's experience, there is no manifest world. So cosmology, we cannot even talk about cosmology without bringing consciousness in it, because we have to experience it. Of course, people immediately wonder, okay, cosmos, Big Bang, all that happens 13.7 billion years ago. And how is that possible? There could not have been any conscious people around at that time. But this is one of the surprises of quantum physics. There is a phenomenon called delayed choice. We can choose later, but things that happened before did not really happen. They were on a limbo of potentiality, and they collapsed going backward in time. That's how the universe came about. So these basic questions of cosmology, quantum physics addresses very easily. It's not a problem. The point is that the world happens in our experience, in the observer's experience. Otherwise, the world is just potentiality. And in that potentiality, it's easy to theorize that we not only have material possibilities for consciousness to choose from, but also possibilities for all our experience, namely vital feeling, meaning, thinking, intuiting archetypes and human values, not just sensing of material objects. So 4 types of experiences happen because there are 4 different worlds of potentiality within consciousness, which is the ground of all being. When we collapse, consciousness manifests with a self-identity in the brain because of brain's special property, which we call tangled hierarchy. But that's detail. We have all these experiences. What takes us towards experiencing the cosmos in a way that we can call it, we are cosmic beings. Because one of the problems of, one of the reasons that materialist science has made such inroads is that it has opened us to the cosmos in a way that we could not have done without these material instruments. We can look at the observable universe and at least look at them. Can we consciously participate in this visible universe? Can we? This is the question of cosmology that eventually quantum science can answer, and already some answers are emerging. So I'll take you to there, but let me develop a little further. We evolve. We evolved from very primitive beginnings, and these primitive beginnings were not fully reconciled with the purpose of the universe, namely take us to meaningful exploration of the cosmos. We are so busy surviving that much distortion happened in the way that reality was initially manifested. But with human beings, eventually we corrected much of that. We had finally a meaning processor in the game who could give meaning to what is happening around us in the world. So cosmology for the first time could be conceived by a living being. It began with a single cell, but that characteristic of making a worldview beyond our experiences, what is the meaning of our experiences, was unclear, completely unclear. In fact, distorted until the human being appeared in the picture. But the human being also initially were only looking at the physical world, giving meaning to the physical world, missing the boat. And then it started giving meaning to vital energies of feelings. And then it started giving meaning to meaning itself, rational mind. And this is the era that we are still on. What is next? Next is the crucial thing. It starts giving meaning to our archetypal experiences that we intuit. It is not a common experience right now, and especially following up the archetypal intuition into a search for reality, which requires creativity, is done only by a few people. For example, the assembly of speakers here. But outside of that, people are interested, but they don't know how. But now we have the dynamics of creativity sorted out in quantum science of experiences. So perhaps everybody can join the creative adventure. What happens when you join the creative adventure? Initially, our attention is all taken up by the outside because we can see a lot that we can understand conceptually, although we cannot participate in it, we cannot see how we can participate. For example, how we can communicate even with an extraterrestrial being. Physics does not allow such communication. We cannot build rocket ships to go out there. We have to somehow find a consciousness connection. But this consciousness connection that I call non-locality is, however, signal-less, and there is no space limit for it. We can communicate via it anywhere, a person anywhere in the universe, except of course the clutch is, how do I correlate with this person? Is there a way where such correlation can happen? Now here, when we correlate human beings and find that they too can do non-local communication, the mystery of correlation is making intention. That's it. You intend to be correlated and you are correlated. It's an amazing thing. Of course, you make sure that the intention goes on by meditating on the intention, because ordinarily intention is momentary, correlation is momentary, and as soon as you have collapsed your consciousness again to look at something or think something, that correlation is broken. So during the experiment, the trick is for people not only to intend, but meditate on the intention so that they hold the intention the entire time. And if they do, then it turns out that brain waves transfer from one brain to the other, proving beyond any reasonable doubt that conscious communication is also non-local. In this way, we now have very definite data that non-locality applies to human beings, quantum science applies to human beings, as well as to the material world. What is the mystery of material world at the macroscopic plane, where Newtonian laws should hold, at least approximately? That mystery is solved by realizing that we have subtle bodies, this mental, vital body of feelings, mental body of meanings, archetypal, the intuitive body of archetypes. These bodies are quantum bodies. We only can explore them internally, experience them internally. That's a surefire quantum science. This quantum body connects consciousness with the macro world, which is decoherent, but the decoherence is not the case when our brain measures the mind or measures the vital energies. It becomes a measurement apparatus, and measurement apparatus is one exception where the decoherence goes away. It's a quantum measurement apparatus become induced way, in an induction way, a quantum object momentarily for the purpose of measurement. In the same way, brain or our organs in the heart chakra or organs in the navel chakra, they all can become instruments of quantum measurement, and in this way, they get self-reference. They also acquire a self. And when we combine the self into a holistic existence, combine the brain, the heart, the navel chakra, which gives us basic survival motif. When we combine all this, heart, of course, is for love, and the brain is for thinking, eventually for intuitive thinking. When we integrate all this, we develop an intelligence which can be called supramental intelligence, a term borrowed from Sri Aurobindo. Now, what happens then? Then we are moving beyond this era of mental. We are moving this beyond this era of mental is a fantastic future that is ahead of us. We are not there yet, but we will be. When we are there, what happens? How to get there, that is a challenge. And we cannot, of course, predict when and how that will happen. But this much we can predict. That's how science works. That since we have all three other phases completed, we will have an intuitive phase in the future. So what happens in that intuitive phase? And this is where the big possibility opens up that we can call human being graduating to be a cosmic being. In other words, the cosmology that physicists and cosmologists study, that cosmology that we only can see from far but cannot participate in, becomes really participatory. But how? Non-locality is a concept. How do we use it with a being in an outer planet? This is the big question. Now you have to go back to the vital era of human development. So what happened in that era? Many feminist anthropologists, they call this era the era of golden age, because there were amazing equality of men and women in that era. There were amazing connectivity among human beings in that era, so much connectivity that we developed this collective unconscious that is proven now beyond any reasonable doubt. It's a Jungian concept. We don't not only have personal unconscious of personal memories, but we also have a collective unconscious of collective memories of humanity. But how did that happen? Humanity lived in tribes, small tribes, between which there were very little communication. So how did that happen? That very little communication was enough because that produced intention. Very little communication is all it takes, because that produces an intention to share, and that is enough because all the people of the community is already one. People of another community is already one. All we need is a little bit of production of intention. Now, in the case of the human beings, this intention production has a mechanism. This mechanism is called reincarnation. Now, reincarnation is a very strange phenomenon for the Westerners, especially to believe, but the data is now enormously in support, and there is a theory given by quantum science which completely has been verified by the data. And the theory makes sense, makes common sense. That's an amazing thing. Our memory has two components. One component is what we memorize, facts, and the other component is we learn to use it, our ability to use it. That's called learning. I'm a learner person because I can use my learning to achieve goals that without the learning I could not achieve. This learning ability is not stored in our brain. It is stored as non-local memory in the domain of potentiality. That, in principle, is shareable, again by intention. So in this way, what I'm saying is that people, because they reincarnate, and if they reincarnate with suitable motivations and generalization that becomes possible when you open that far, we have already come this far. This is a lot to talk about in this conference, the way that you are talking about, than a conference 30 years ago, which I attended plenty of. Conferences of cosmology where only physics, astronomy, cosmology, these things were discussed as if there is nothing but the physical universe. And today we are talking about consciousness of the physical universe. Of course, the physical universe is conscious to us. That is beyond any reasonable doubt. Quantum physics has proven that. I've already shared that information with you. But now we come to the realization that once we become intuitive, we can become connected again. Not connected with everybody else in humanity, which of course are difficult to even conceive, given the state of the mind of most human beings today. 85% live in a very base level human condition, full of negative emotions, racism, sexism, and all that stuff. I don't dare to conceive how that can be changed anytime soon. But I do dare to conceive that a fraction of that, maybe as large as 10%, is already tuned to the cosmic tune, cosmic purpose of communicating, becoming a cosmic citizen, communicating with extraterrestrials. And then how do you do it? That's the question. As I said, when the intuitive mind, selectively, of course, because only a portion of humanity right now are ready to connect. And if we connect, then we become not only connected with us, but connected with a dedicated number of people throughout the universe. There is no limit of how far we can go. Signalless communication can connect us all instantly with just that intention and that ability that we have gained. We now are easily connected to consciousness and connected to each other. That's the entrance requirement to this cosmic club. Our collective unconscious, humanity's collective unconscious, is a subset of a much bigger unconscious of the universe, the whole universe. Of course, it is built in subsets. So there probably is a subset of galactic consciousness, subset of nearby galaxies and all that. A subset of planets close to the Earth, this portion of the galaxy and all that. So you have to go through all that. But humanity has plenty of time, even on this planet, to achieve that. And then what? Then there is a problem that exists in the theory of creativity that I have developed some time ago on the basis of quantum science. By the way, quantum science gives explanation to all our experiences, including creativity. The crucial thing in our exploration of this cosmic connection. What I found that there is a creativity which deals with situational problems, and those are easily solved, especially when we liberate ourselves from our personal unconscious and find access to the collective unconscious. But then what? How do you access beyond the collective unconscious? This is a problem that is very difficult to solve. One way of solving it is, of course, is to say that, well, somehow a quantum leap happens anyway, because it is a fact that it does happen. We do get insights, completely new something, new context, new archetypal context. We do get those insights, fundamental creativity. But still, it's not entirely satisfactory because the probabilities are very low. And even if you consider that a creative person really has to be very dogged in his search, I have been and you have been, we know how hard it is to come across a creative insight. It takes years and years of investigation sometimes. Even when you know the process, as we know now. But then maybe there is an easy answer. This is where I'll go into speculation. Rest of what I have said is all verified science. The speculation is that maybe, and this was a speculation that started with Sri Aurobindo, the great spiritual seer as well as a scientist. He postulated that it buys you, this supramental intelligence buys you membership of a greater unconscious. Not in these words, I'm using my own words, but he implied. So let's take that idea seriously. If we can then become members of this cosmic unconscious, and therefore that's where fundamental creativity comes from. Of course, for Einstein, it's just an idea that he is getting. He is not trying to transform himself to an intuitive being. For us, the challenge is even greater because we not only want to get the idea, but we also want to live the idea. That's the whole idea. Living it, I become a cosmic citizen by connecting to the cosmic club, connecting to the collective unconscious, connecting to this great membership of extraterrestrial beings who are similarly in their intuitive mind. This is speculation, to be sure, but speculation based on very solid foundation. We know unconscious, we have known it since Freud. We know collective unconscious, we have known it since Jung. And then I have proposed quantum unconscious for entirely new potentiality. And of course, the question is how to access it. Quantum unconscious, if it has a cosmic unconscious in the way that I'm proposing, then it gives us access through fundamental creativity. And this access is the basic access that is in our capacity to build. The entire requirement is to develop supramental intelligence. Now again, spiritual traditions, they gave us the cosmology, the basic ontology of the cosmology. Consciousness is the ground of all beings, which is now being accepted by everyone contributing to this conference. That is my understanding. Okay, but they were not perfect. They made mistakes. Their mistake was they thought the rest of the world, manifest world, is illusion. If you take away that dogma and combine science, integrate science and spirituality, this is why my talk is about integration of science and spirituality. We need that integration. Integration means that no, the manifest world has to be taken seriously. This is the purpose. Otherwise, what's the purpose of a world in potentiality? That has never happened in anybody's experience. So if the purpose is manifest all the aspects of consciousness, namely these archetypes, which are aspects of consciousness, and then define the not the nihilistic aspect of the archetypes, but the positive aspect of the archetype. Oneness can be thought of as oneness as everything. Oneness can also thought of as wholeness of the consciousness that you experience things with, without any conflict, wholeness. So if we approach wholeness and transform accordingly, that then becomes the vehicle for integrating science and spirituality in such a way that we become cosmic citizens at the level when we develop the supramental intelligence, including the archetype of wholeness. And that is the entrance requirement for joining this cosmic club. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit. Very inspiring. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that Amit has joined us from India. We really appreciate it. It's quite late there. So here's a question from Chris Hudson. There are many who doubt the relevance of quantum processes, such as entanglement and superposition, on the macro level or the classical level, specifically for consciousness. So what do you consider to be the most compelling evidence for such applications, particularly to understanding consciousness? I guess he's asking if quantum mechanics, consciousness happens on a classical level, how can quantum processes explain it?
Well, consciousness is the collapser of quantum possibilities into actual events. And therefore, without consciousness, there would be no manifest reality, right? So manifest reality, all is consciousness, except that, of course, we participate in it because we have to be the observer. Only in the presence of an observer does the collapse happen. So the observer and consciousness become the same consciousness. The consciousness manifests in the observer's brain through this mechanism of tangle hierarchy in the brain. If you take this into account, it's explained in all my books, including the very first book, Self-Aware Universe. Please read, and all confusion about how quantum physics can apply to the world disappears. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And a second question here is from C.D. Clayton. He says he used the term consciousness to choose from. And does the evolutionary tendency towards wholeness, completeness, and oneness have a cognitive aspect of choosing also? In other words, there's consciousness, but there's also a tendency towards completeness and wholeness.
Yes, consciousness, this is conveyed by the notion of purpose. Consciousness chooses with the purpose of creating wholeness, purpose of creating more coherence, purpose of creating a participation among all the citizens of the universe. Yes, if conscious purpose was not geared in that way, we would not have our cognitive abilities would not be geared in that way either. Thank you. That's a great question.
All right, good. Another question is, would you speak more about the distinction between oneness, can be thought of oneness with everything? Oneness can also be thought as wholeness of consciousness that you're experiencing without separation between yourself and others.
Oneness is an idea that also proclaims that one without a second. There is none other than oneness. And this is important to understand. This is why that concept of illusory reality got created, because if oneness is everything and always is inseparable, then whatever causes a separateness must be illusory, a perception, not real. Okay, that is true, but the perception is persistent, and therefore the argument of science is that a persistent perception is certainly not illusory. It's an epiphenomenon of the oneness. So what do we do with the epiphenomenal world then? Well, it is purposive, because evolution also shows that there is a one-way arrow in biological evolution. Evolution is geared, is directed from very simple creatures to complex creatures like us. Simplicity to complexity. This is against entropy. It's a one-way arrow of time. Where does that come from? It comes from the purposive movement of consciousness. But of course, ordinarily, conscious movement of purposiveness is expressing itself in a probabilistic way. And this is the problem. We have to work within that probabilistic way to find our way to purposiveness. And consciousness has been trying to do that in a very random way. And this is why all these problems happen in the past. That is reflected in the struggle for existence, competitiveness, and all that. But once we wake up from that, once we achieve wholeness, which is also an integration of negative emotions with positive emotions, a wholeness of archetypal dichotomies like good and evil. When we have achieved that, no conflicts, then we can always choose with purpose those things that we create. The conditioned world can still go on, and that will keep the probability happy. We cannot violate the rules of probability. That's also quantum physics. But within that, there is a lot of leeway for free will, for freedom to choose reality, freedom to choose purposive. And this is that freedom is the freedom we take advantage of, those of us who find our way to wholeness, supramental intelligence.
Very good. Okay, I think there's time for one more question. If the universe is conscious through non-local communication, couldn't it collapse on its own wave function? In other words, could the universe be its own observer?
Well, yes, it is always the universe observing itself in some sense. Of course, this cosmic consciousness is really cosmic. And therefore, ultimately, this is true. But of course, in an actual case, as soon as we become conditioned beings, we detach from consciousness. So a lot of non-connected aspects of things can happen in a probabilistic way. And this is why we get that Newtonian world, the very materialist world that we live right now. But as I said, as we become a member of the coherence club, I noticed Arvind also mentioned the word coherence several times. Coherence is a quantum effect. That's the quantumization of this segment of society. So in this group, there is a quantumization, there is a coherence of purpose. And then it's an uphill battle for sure against probability and entropy, but it certainly is a very winnable battle, just as life has won against the bigger battle of entropy for the non-living world. Similarly, we can call ourselves a entropy-defying intelligence, world of intelligence, which will again defy the law of entropy for living beings, because living beings are also under entropy when they become conditioned machines. And this is what we have to overcome, but we can do it. Well, by the way, you can get all this stuff that I'm talking about. We have a quantum university, quantum activism Vishala, which we are teaching masters and PhD to people. And you have all this, we have detailed courses in every one of the subjects that I very quickly refer to. Okay.
Well, that's great. I think we put that information into the chat, so it's all there for people to see. We thank you, Amit. Thank you coming all the way from India. Thank you for giving us how we can bring in the quantum theories into a spiritual understanding. That's very helpful and inspiring. So we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, good night to you there. So the next speaker, Fred Tsao, and he's going to speak about ancient Chinese cosmology. Fred was born in the East and educated in the West, He is the fourth generation leader of the IMC Pan-Asia Alliance Group, became chairman in 1995, and transformed the family business from a traditional shipping company to a diverse multinational conglomerate. With more than 40 years experience as an entrepreneur, Fred has worked successfully with business partners and governments in multiple markets across diverse cultures. Not afraid to push boundaries as chairman of Intercargo, Fred repositioned the dry bulk industry from a shipper to one that plays a role within the global supply chain. Fred founded East-West Cultural Development Center in Singapore in 1995 to conduct research on sustainability and modernity. His exploration into Eastern wisdom led him to focus on Chinese esoteric traditions and Western quantum science. Both are paradigms of consciousness and evolution. He published 30 books in Chinese, concluding that we are amidst a major conscious shift and at the dawn of a new era of well-being. He advocates that business should transform and reform our era. For this, he founded Octave Institute, a comprehensive, integrated life journey approach towards well-being. In 2019, Fred co-authored the book Quantum Leadership, New Consciousness in Business with Chris Laszlo, who was a son of Irvin Laszlo, that was published by Stanford University Press. And Fred also contributed a piece to another book entitled Reconnecting to the Source in the Mirror of Chinese Culture, that was in collaboration with Irvin Laszlo. And the book that is entitled Reconnecting to the Source. So with that, we will begin now. Unfortunately, Fred is in Singapore and time difference is exactly, I think, opposite the East Coast time. So Fred was not able to be live with us, but he has given us a video. Let's listen to Fred's talk.
The Chinese think of the cosmos in the thought of the Wuji, and they think of the universe as Taiji, the Tai Chi, and the evolutionary energy that comes from the Wuji to create the Taiji. And it follows certain rules. And as you can see that the Taiji is represented by a circle called the absolute, which is, and then inside the yin and yang, which is a rotating, each interdepending with the black fish with the white eye and the white fish with the black eye rotating, spinning, spiraling, each intertwined with each other, giving birth to each other, rotating like a sine curve, or spinning and evolving like a spiral in the three-dimensional world. And all is created through this energy called Qi, the material Qi. But it comes from the nature of the cosmos called De, which is virtue. The virtue is what gives us the foundation. It's our nature. So virtue is our nature, so that we can be what we are. So a dog has its dog virtue, and a cat has a cat virtue. A dog virtue, if it's in the cat cannot survive, in reverse. And human has human virtue, so that we can become human. And then the energy, which is the material energy of Tao, creates into this energetic vibration, which is also validated by quantum science. It is nothing but an appearance of solidity, appearance of reality, and not really real. The Chinese believe that. But the Chinese ground this cosmology onto really astrology and a way of life. So cosmology in China is totally intertwined with life and living. The Chinese believe that we have to live according to Tao in order for us to prosper. There's also a saying in the Tao Te Ching. It says, Tao is great. The universe is great. Earth is great. But human is also great. We're all in one corner of the four corner in creating reality, in creating life. And Chinese believe that human is the most creative and most spiritual being among all things. All things, huh? Not all living things, not all animals, it's all things. That means more than Earth, more than the universe. Now we are in the forefront of creating life itself, or in the forefront of shifting consciousness. So the Chinese believe that if we shift our consciousness, that is the ultimate. For shifting consciousness allow us to resolve and create, and therefore evolve and grow. So to the Chinese, cosmology of Wuji, Taiji, and Tao is very important. The Chinese refer the Wuji sometimes as Tian, heaven. And the Chinese believe in its culture a life of following the calling from heaven is the ultimate. The unification to be one with this Tian, which is this heaven, and then a calling from heaven will come to lead you how you live your life. Chinese is very rich with astrology, different way of calculating. One of it very famous is the book of I Ching, the book of change. But the book of change is more than one that calculate astrology, although that is really what it was intended for in the beginning. It has become a very core study of Confucius as the most important study, because if we were to follow and understand what the heaven is saying to us, we have to understand change, essence of change, and change is the only constant. It is the truth of the material world. And to understand change, how change happened, is a gate of understanding on the essence of materialism. It is a gate to understand the Tao. It is the gate of communicating with heaven. So in the old days, it was created because the emperor has to consult with the heaven, so they have to go and ask and consult the energy of the heaven, what heaven is saying, and they use the I Ching. So we can see the cosmology in the Chinese sense actually ground onto how we live. It's a very practical thing. It's not a study of that, but a practical application of that into how we live. A book on agriculture, what the West may call it biodynamic farming, has long been in China. But not only a book of biodynamics, it was a book of what you should do or should not do every day. Today is good for getting married. Tomorrow, well, it's not good for going out. Day after tomorrow, wow, this is good, open up business. And they go into a different level of appropriation to do whatever activities. And this is calculated based on the position of the stars. The calendar of China is built on the position of Earth, Moon, and the Sun. Unlike the Egyptian that built the calendar based on Ceres, Earth, and the Sun. So it permeates the cosmology and astrology into daily life, into making living on every aspect of the Chinese traditional culture. And able to live according to the rhythm or the law of the universe, or Tao, or heaven, a whole ethical, philosophical system has been developed in ancient Chinese tradition. Of course, today it has been kind of put aside, but there is a revitalization of that in this new administration to come into revitalization of this way of living. The administration calls on a new paradigm, a new worldview, which is tradition. And it said for the reality of the common destiny of humanity, we must take a oneness with heaven cosmo view. Well, heaven there meaning inside us, because we are created from heaven. The heaven is in us. So that means connect with ourselves, to become oneness with ourselves, a true self, our soul, our deepest consciousness that comes from the field, our Tao, because Tao is us and we are Tao. Right? And so we are in this whereby human being or Chinese believe in this era to go back to this oneness situation. We're going back to the situation of harmonizing relationship and achieving goodness is a morality. And goodness actually is wholeness, is love and all that thing. So we won't go into that. The point about it is cosmology is life and living for the Chinese. It's into daily drips and drabs of expression. And that tradition is gradually being revitalized right now. Cosmology is in every aspect of Chinese life. Cosmology is even into the Chinese politics today and Chinese paradigm. You can see the Chinese leadership in United Nations addressing energy of the universe, the yin and yang, and how humanity should work in the new definition of the paradigm that's being promoted in China. The unity with the cosmos as our fundamental cosmic view, or the unity of the oneness with heaven, which is the cosmos, is our cosmo view. That means we seek that, right? And then harmonizing between nation, and then collaboration among diversity, then achieving goodness as morality to create this Chinese characteristic, which is worldview, socialistic market economy. So it is penetrating throughout every aspect of life and living for the Chinese. Cosmology is a core of it. And now, even translating that into structures and system, into business reform, into economic reform, into reform of the goodness economy. It requires the population, especially business people, to do the redistribution of income for the third time and to flourish together with all the issues, the challenges of everyone. But that is a very, very big demand, because when you're doing the economics, you realize that a market economy is not in line with the universe. It's not ethical. That created all the things. We are now facing with an ethical challenge, including Chinese themselves. So we need to have a reform in ethics. And so therefore the Confucius ethics is bringing up, and they require the business to act accordingly. And to do that, it must come from the heart. It doesn't want the money, because when they talk about this, the Tencent and Alibaba all give billions, but that's not what the government wants. The government wants their heart. Government wants their creativity to create this new economy, to create this whole process, this whole new energy, right? So we can see with the new rise of revitalization of Chinese paradigm, cosmology will once again become very, very high in the Chinese culture in the modern days again. So ancient Chinese cosmology is coming back into a modern expression, into modern life and living as it was once upon a time. So let me continue on the creation of humans in the Chinese tradition, which comes from cosmology. So in the book of medicine called the Yellow Emperor Canon, it talks about the creation of life. And it says something like this: the virtue of heaven, which is the cosmos, and the virtue is nature, or human nature, get merged with the energy of earth. And then Tao, or Shen, which is God in the Chinese thing, which is creation, enters. When it enters, our soul will start being formed. And the soul has three components: a soul from heaven, which is information from heaven; a soul from earth, the information from earth; and the soul of our karmic life, of our individuated conscious karmic life, gathered in this right moment, and the soul is birth. And the earth soul consists of everything of knowledge of existence. So when we die, the three souls goes back into the three places. When it births, it is a revolutionary, and it meets and it creates the three soul united, and we start coming onto earth. And then the energy that drives us, the seven energy that drives us, which is emotions, different kind of emotion: joy, aversion, sadness, fear, love, desire, and evilness, are the energy that drives, called Po. From there, our heart mind is created, and then our consciousness of the material world, which is the tip of the iceberg of the iceberg model of psychology, where below iceberg is the subconscious and unconscious, is birth. Then we have an orientation of thoughts and will, and then we start thinking about it and creating the rest. So you can see the cosmology actually talked about there's not a man and a woman and they get together and then it's not physical. It's all about these energy that comes in there and then creating the reality. Because long they said it is the gathering of chi that makes it the form. So there's no different than quantum science. So when we die, we go back into a layer and layer of disappearance of this information and peeling off. And so the book of medicine talked a lot. It also mentioned the book of medicine that these are like 3,000 years old book, right? So if we live according to the rhythm of the universe and we don't lose our childlike nature, on average we'll live 120 years. But there are 4 types of people that live longer: the people that are wise, and the people that are kind, and then the sages, and then finally they call the true human. And if you reach a true human, you live together with heaven and earth. That means you don't die, or at least you're really, really long life. Sounds like crazy, but this is recorded. And Chinese medicine is not healing illness, it's healing lifeness. It's dealing with life. So it's a very different concept, how cosmology comes in, and everything is life. So the whole thing. So if you have bad luck, well, you have a life sickness. That needs to heal that. And you need to do certain things. Change the way you live. Change your paradigm to heal your life. So even your life has bad luck, you can heal it. So this is very unusual because everything is created from thoughts. Everything is created. So what is the significance of this 3-dimension? Well, there's a saying called 以假修真 in the Chinese. That means that it is just an appearance. It is just a clustering of energy to give the appearance, but you still used it, which is not real, to correct what is real. Because you think about it, it makes sense, right? The cosmos has no movement. Only when you become physical, when you go to 3-dimensional, there is only change, there is only movement. And it's only through this movement of change you can change in the cosmic reality, into the multi-dimensional higher level. So the lower level 3-dimension movement that we can use the will of the universe to evolve, we can evolve the energy, we can evolve the field. So this revival of this Chinese wisdom in the 21st century is not coincidental, just like the quantum paradigm. There is no coincidence. Everything is what it should be, because moment to moment it is calibrated to perfect. And karma is real because cause and effect. All information that is created of all action and thoughts and everything never destroyed. It is recorded inside. And that energy and that consciousness is moving. And when the right element is there, the appearance or the form is being created. The cause and effect of actions. And so this moment, the rise of quantum paradigm, changes the way we understand cosmos, changes the way we actually study the universe, changes the modality of studying astronomy. It's still there. But from the quantum paradigm comes the science, the science of consciousness of life, be it is epigenetics, neuroscience, psychology, contemplative science, even integral philosophy, and so forth, so forth. So, cosmos, under the quantum paradigm, changed the way we are really doing a study and rebranding it or repositioning it back into life itself. Because in the quantum paradigm, life is everything and everything is life. There is only life, no more, no less. The evolution of life and the creation of life for evolution. And so the Western science are changing. If you think about today, the separation being reunified, we call cross-disciplinary studies or cross-disciplinary unity. Well, if you keep going on the trend, everything is cross, cross, cross. And then instead of split, like philosophy splitting up into all the pieces, but as we get enough understanding in the material world, it starts integrating back. And the integration process, we will end it up with just one subject, life. There's no more. So Chinese culture is a life science of the past. It's talking exactly what the quantum science is talking about. It's talking about consciousness, the ultimate of healing. Consciousness, the ultimate of creation. So the ancient science of life, coming from cosmology, it is really a good life science to help humanity integrate as one. So the Western life science of consciousness, Chinese life science of consciousness. One comes from quantum paradigm and realization of consciousness. One comes from ancient tradition wisdom. In the 21st century, in the globalized world, where all wisdom of humanity is for humanity, has now come to a crossroad of integration, sharing, and further development. The educated Chinese in ancient time seek a different kind of life journey. A life journey that is aligned with the cosmos. A life journey that moves Trudge to become a sage. And in the book of The Middle Way, it says, your calling is your nature. But this nature is not your habitual nature, but your virtuous nature. So your calling is your nature. When you follow your true nature, it's your true nature, you are now becoming down. And if you continue to refine this calling and down, it's called education. You're educating yourself, but also you become educating to everybody around you as well. So we could imagine, if we answer the existential question of life, which we can now in the modern science, and then we look at this material world, where it's leading us, we might choose a different path for life, a different life journey, a different aspiration. Thank you.
All right. Well, we thank Fred. We're sorry that he was not able to be live with us. So, of course, we have no questions and answers now. But before we take our break for 5 minutes, I'd like to turn it over to Alexander, who has a short message he'd like to give.
Yeah, just to share with everyone how much I am enjoying this. I hope that you are enjoying this immensely as well. Isn't it wonderful, the weaving that we're experiencing here from different cultures? A lot of what Fred was talking about are these harmonics, right? These different ways in which we're tuning actually into the ground state of being of this fabulous emerging cosmos and our universe emerging within it, and that flow process. So to keep it short, I want to just say, if you are enjoying this, please remember that all the works of the Laszlo Institute being brought to you are being brought to you free. But if you have the chance and the opportunity to donate and help us offset some of our costs, it would be wonderful. The link for doing that is going to be in the chat here as well. Now, as we take our break, I'm hoping that you can enjoy some music. In the nature of the harmonies that we're looking at, this music is from Ervin Laszlo. He is also a concert pianist, and so enjoy his music. We'll see you in 5 minutes.